Now let's stay on voter fraud allegations. Rudy Giuliani, Sidney Powell, and the rest of the Trump campaign's legal team hosted a press conference, once again alleging the existence of a large-scale voter fraud operation. NBCNews.com political reporter Timm is here to walk us through the whole thing. Now, Jane, I think it's fair to say it was sort of all over the place to an extent. We heard some things we hadn't heard from them before yet. In your opinion, what was the most glaring allegation that stood out during the conference?
Yeah, the biggest one was this idea that it's a massive national urban conspiracy that cost the president the election instead of just an election. Let's listen to what Rudy Giuliani said, because I think you have to hear it to believe this.
Not a singular voter fraud in one state. This pattern repeats itself in a number of states. Almost exactly the same pattern, which to any experienced investigator, prosecutor, would suggest that there was a plan from a centralized place to execute these various acts of voter fraud, specifically focused on big cities.
This is very, very serious allegations, and it did not come with an ounce of credible evidence. So they talked up affidavits that had been shot down in court as meritless already. They said if we just can get to court, we will be able to prove our case and you'll totally see it. They said we had a lot of affidavits, but they wouldn't show some of those affidavits. They said we just didn't believe them as the press corps. There really wasn't a lot of evidence here, and it was incredibly serious, incredibly wild claims.
Yeah, I want to talk about one of those affidavits. So Dominion, that voting software, Trump's legal team says they have a signed affidavit alleging the software company swayed the election. Now, you just mentioned how reporters haven't seen this stuff. Has anybody seen that document, and where did it allegedly come from?
So that document's attached to a case in Georgia. I went and looked through it today. It's a partially redacted affidavit by a former military official in Venezuela who talks about Hugo Chavez, who died in 2013, as we all know. This is sort of where it turns into like a little bit of conservative buzzword soup, where you talk about George Soros, Hugo Chavez, communists, Cuba, China. You know, this is where you start to be a little bit confused. The affidavit specifically was about another software company, not Dominion, though they sort of seem to insinuate they had something to do with Dominion, a competitor of theirs. The company Smartmatic is the one that this affidavit is about. Didn't do any of the battleground software this year. So when it comes to this, when you try and tie the bow here, you actually have a lot of trouble because you're kind of just, they're flooding the zone with false claims. That's what this press conference really was. A lot of false claims and a lot of serious ones without evidence.
Yeah, so we actually also heard some stuff, like I mentioned before, and like you're talking about right now, that we hadn't heard before. We spoke about New Mexico and Virginia, two states we really haven't heard much about from them. Are they claiming there was voter fraud there, too?
Yeah, they were saying things like, we're looking very seriously at New Mexico. Biden won both states by 10 points. They're pretty blue states at this point. The idea that there's some sort of widespread fraud that could change the election, I mean, President Trump would have to flip the results of 3 states, which it seems incredibly unlikely, if not impossible, for him to do post-election without any evidence of any wrongdoing. So I think they're grasping at straws. And this also felt like a continuation of sort of flooding the zone, putting a lot of stuff out there just to try and keep the attention and the fundraising going by the president's campaign.
Hey, NBC News viewers, thanks for checking out our YouTube channel. Subscribe by clicking on that button down here and click on any of the videos over here to watch the latest interviews, show highlights, and digital exclusives. Thanks for watching.